GM, and welcome to the Modern Market. This is our daily show running from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. EST, where we talk all things about the modern market, the crypto market. The Germany is still continuing to dump its Bitcoin market. Today, I'm joined by my co-host, Brett. It's just going to be the two of us, but since I finally now am control of the Roadcaster and all things that go with it, we are good to host the show as per usual, also with a little surprise with a custom song that I tried out today for the first time instead of the usual trap beats that I'm using. However, with that out of the way, one more final notice that nothing that we say on this show is financial advice because we have no clue about what's going on in the market. With that out of the way, Brett, welcome to the stage. How are you doing? What are your thoughts on the song?
I heard that Euro correction. I've spent so much time in the advice. Where you guys W all the V's.
Time, yeah.
Did, but you caught yourself. That was good. Anyways, yeah, man. So that sound ridiculous for AI, and thanks for including me. That's pretty awesome. Had me laughing at a few parts. Yeah, man. Let's get this thing going. It's Germany's selling and we're hanging out. Let's have some fun.
Indeed. Did you have a chance to look at before we get into the news? Because I certainly did take a look at the Blast Gold distribution. Is it something that you still look at, or are you not too worried about it, given that's a year-long season?
Yeah. So yeah, that dropped yesterday. I basically just looked at the top tier and then saw if there's any outliers. Like I saw Cambria was still on there, did okay. Fantasy, which is what I'm involved in, was top. So awesome. I stay involved there. Thesis doesn't change. I wrote yesterday, I marked those cards to 0 and kind of just am going to farm that for the next year passively because I think I have a pretty good deck, a couple good decks. And then, yeah, other than that, like I know prediction markets was up top, even though there is no current prediction market on Blast. So I think that kind of talks to how, or speaks to how susceptible the team is to the current narrative, I think, because, Polymarket's been jumping to the front of the headlines with, was it 100 million last month that they had in volume, which was a first for them. They were really excited about it. TBD on if that's purely based on just political season, which, I mean, obviously it's a huge part of it. I think it's like 97% of all volume, but yeah. So I think it's kind of cool to see that they're going where the narratives are. They're humans too, right?
I think the poly market stuff is like the most fascinating to me. Obviously, in the Blast Gold distribution, it now has basically the highest weight, which means exactly what you said. They are trying to attract a poly market like platform. But if you look at poly market right now, presidential election winner 2024, $240 million bet. Democratic nominee 2024 is up to 97 mil. And then the will Biden drop out of the presidential race bet is up to 13 mil. And this has gotten to a level where we see mainstream media including the poly market numbers in the reports. So I do think that the interesting part connecting this to Blast is that obviously, like when you're building your ecosystem, as Pacman is trying to do, you are watching what else is gaining and garnering the market's interest, and poly market, prediction markets certainly have to be on top on that. And then you try to attract some builders to recreate something similar for Blast. And do you think that having basically that high multiplier and that high weight and trying to attract them with gold is enough? Is that something that builders will look into and either think, hey, let's also launch on Blast, or actually build something custom for Blast? Or
I know for a fact, because of like even just in that short window between that announcement and today, which is whatever 12 hours, I've already had people hit me up and like, hey, I want to build this. Like, there's the opportunity, what's going on? And to be honest, I've been talking about prediction markets for the last few months, and I've tweeted a few times that I think Polymarket, I'm American, so that's tough for a lot of reasons. One, betting is not awesome, so regulatorily it's not cool. But anyways, so I was thinking about spinning up a prediction market product because I think there is a huge onboarding headwind for Polymarket because frankly it's dog shit. It's not great. You have to, one, play on Matic. Two, you have to like spin up a custodial wallet that's not really that great. Like it's an embedded wallet. And I just think since they've actually come up are coming to market, there's been a lot of innovations with embedded wallets, with social sign-in, with all these things. And I think there's an opportunity for someone else to come in and create a really slick UX for onboarding, right? You come in, you sign in with your Twitter, you have the embedded wallets, you don't have to remember seed phrases and do all that shit. And then you can bring those social elements forward, because I think it would be much, much more fun and interactive and encourage people to place bets. If I could go in there and see like Legendary just bet that Solana is going to flip Ethereum and Thieves this month. And I go, Legendary, you're fucking wrong. I'm going to bet against you. And then it becomes kind of a fun PvP stuff. Like obviously getting some questions there because again, Americans can't really participate very easily. So like that's a little bit of a headwind, but I think there's an opportunity there for someone to come in there and improve that and make it like a true Web3 experience. Yeah, I don't know.
I like that. I like the social thought of it. I mean, you see that with people posting whatever futures they've been trading and that they either won or lost a shit ton of money, but actually being able to have like a little nice card that you share, and that you also see on the platform that, I don't know, Thread guy is betting this, Thread is betting that, Legendary
Right.
is this would be pretty interesting. And then you probably could, based on that, also spin up certain challenges and have like little tournaments going. Ultimately, that's what's currently working for Fantasy Top as well with Tactics, where people pay, what is it, $20 and never paid more
20.
entry fee. And they're doing quite a bit of revenue with that. So you can have like little fun tournaments. There could be a modern market community challenge, whatever. Do think that that's a pretty good idea, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I've been calling for it. I would do it myself if I wasn't American and like all the headwinds with regulatory structure there. But yeah, I think because I think back to like Friendtech days, right? Friendtech was really interesting because you saw who was selling who directly, right? Like Bread sold Legendary, then everyone else would see that and they would react and behave to it. They'd post about it, it'd create content. It would also influence the market because people would like value or think I'm dumb and like bet either fade me or go with me, whatever. And I just think that like all of that brings momentum, which solves one of the big problems with prediction markets, which is liquidity, right? Like they're trying to do incentivized bidding right now with like basically nothing. It's like 0.1% USDC returns if you're close to the bid ask. And it's like, it's okay, but it's, yeah. I just think there's something there.
Yeah, that's a very good point. But out of all the examples you could have picked, it was Bread sold Legendary. I mean, that has to hurt. Anyhow, we have quite a few news for today. So let's get into the news. Let's get into the snapshot, which we have pinned on top for everyone watching on X. Before we get into the news, though, quick look at the crypto market. Bitcoin pretty flat, down 0.5% over the last 24 hours, sitting at 57.3K. ETH basically doing the same thing at $3,071. Solana down 1% at $140. In terms of the main headlines for today, the Germany BTC dumping, BTC selling continues. This time, however, with a big amount, with 16K BTC sent to exchanges and remaining balance of 24K BTC. Our favorite Bitcoin bull, Kruger, is saying that Germany's FBI, I like that American version of explaining things, held 50,000 BTC up to late June. They've been selling relentlessly in small increments since June 19th. And today, as we just said, they went in bigger and moved 16K BTC. And we seem to be entering that final stretch of the German onslaught. Probably won't spend too much time on this piece of news because there's not so much to say on that. And in terms of the second headline, pretty interesting one, Zygames, that node protocol communicates that 36% of the token supply will be unlocking this month after contributors decided to relock, because the numbers that people were speculating that might unlock were as high as 79%. They went on to explain how those numbers came to be, what the actual reality is, and what's going on. We'll dive into that a bit deeper once we get there. And finally, Thread Guy and Andrew Tate podcast, when B-Check, that's pretty insane, actually has written that. He said it did 500K views on X, 100K views on YouTube. And right now we are up to, quickly changing the tab, refreshing, certainly up to more than 2 million views on that. Yeah, 2.1 million views. So that's pretty insane. Definitely want to get into that. In terms of the notable sales, we have one CryptoPunk with Beard selling for 30 ETH. We have a beautiful looking Fidenza selling for 27.5 ETH. Taking a look at the rest of the NFT market, it's actually a bit of a mixed day. Pudgy Penguins basically haven't moved. They are still at a 10.4 ETH floor. Miladies and Remilius, they had a dump yesterday, but have stabilized there, with Miladies sitting at 4 ETH. Azukis, however, are up 7% at a 3.88 ETH floor. Captains have continued the positive momentum and up another 7%. Brett, anything in the NFT market, anything on the heat map that is standing out to you?
Still hate that Genesis is even in the conversation. I'm reminded of you remember those Eigenlayer NFTs that we bought?
Oh yeah, the
Like
world's spots, right?
yeah, like what the fuck? Like we bought those, didn't do anything. We do you remember? Did you get in on the hieroglyph thing whenever it dropped? Like everyone got all excited because the team on Arbitrum, some stealth super dev coder, minted some shit with blobs on Arbitrum, and everyone went and minted like it was one was like a Barachain one and a Monad one and whatever. There's like 5 or 6 of them, and we all went and minted those fucking things. No idea what they are, what they do. So yeah, I hate that we're getting psyoped into this stuff. Maybe it's a play because people are gonna like do it anyways. That was kind of my thesis with the Eigenlayer ones, where like regardless if it actually does anything, people will buy it on speculation that it'll do something. But I wouldn't be surprised if we also look back at this in like 3 weeks and go, oh look, someone was bidding gems, and then all of a sudden they announced a token airdrop. Like, duh, something got leaked, and that's what's going on here. But I hate them anyways.
Yeah, do you think we should have a look if there's a poly market bet on them? But it's interesting to see that they have basically...
It's low. It's like single digits for token airdrop. Is that what you're asking?
So there is one. Interesting.
Yeah, it's like because they do a rolling airdrop bid our market, and it's like every protocol. You have everything from like Pump.Fun to Swell to I think that they did OpenSea and some other ones that are not. So MetaMask is on there, and they do it every few months. Like this one's the end of September, I think it is, and the odds are like single digits.
Yeah, if we see a sudden change in volume and a sudden change in odds, that always reminds me of the Arbitrum situation where we see that spike.
And we're at a conference too, right? Because that happened right after a conference.
Yeah. And the question back there was Arbitrum airdrop within the next 2 weeks. And it was basically a 50-50 all of the time until it like boosted up to 80%, and then the airdrop actually came. But yeah, I think that also kind of connects us with the discussion point before we get into the headlines that we have for the day, and also connects to something that you've been posting about yesterday. Andrew Kang, who we talked about on this show the last time when he had his post, why he thinks that actually the Ethereum ETF is not too bullish, has made a reply to a different discussion that got quite a bit of traction with more than 100K views, saying that I believe 98% or 98+% of altcoins topped for the cycle, except for maybe a handful of coins that maybe make some new highs in Q4 2024, Q1 2025. Bitcoin, I think, is in some transition stage to a super cyclish asset where it retains both properties from previous cycle behavior and also increasingly more of a mature macro asset. And you, Brad, had that post out yesterday where you talked about, I think that's your new favorite metaphor, the euthanasia roller coaster. Yeah. Kind of said that boom, going from 0 to a billy was basically what kickstarted this this roller coaster ride.
Yeah. So what made me think about that was just like I was just reflecting on all the stuff we've been through. Obviously, that was like the kickoff of the pre-sale market. Remember, like that happened because it was a pre-sale, so dark farms, unknown, whatever, ran to 1.5 billion and then bled out. Right? It's kind of jostled around, but it's bled out. And I know that at least in my own head and in some conversations, every non-fundamental coin that's come out since then, so I'm talking like not a blast, not a protocol coin, whatever, so any kind of meme or culture coin has always been marked to like, okay, 1.5 billion is an achievable number, and that gives you the reason to hold, right? Like pups ran up to like 700 or 800 million, and like, okay, well, fuck, if Bohm can get to 1.5 billion, like pups could go two times that, right? And so I think that's what gave everyone all this incentive or confidence to hold their coins. And then obviously it always stops like 30%, 60% short of that, and then bleeds out, and then you end up holding the bag. So I just kind of assume that's going on. But could you imagine, just reflecting on his post, I didn't see that until this morning. How painful would that be if everyone's holding onto their bags and just none of it comes back to life? And like we're kind of seeing it, right? Like not a lot of the old coins from previous cycles have been pumping. We saw like Avalanche kind of start cresting a little bit. Solana's obviously coming up a little bit, but most of it, like it's mostly been new coins. It's been new supply. It hasn't been people buying existing supply. It's been old supply pumping. I know like the ecosystem I came from, VeChain, like that coin's down at 2 cents. It topped at 20, 24, 28 last cycle. Like, God, that's just so much pain to have to like to watch everyone else kind of celebrate through memes and through like the mains pumping and it not coming to your chain or your section that you've been holding for years. Could you imagine if that plays out? Oh God.
Yeah, no, I feel you on that. And Tira is also saying in the YouTube comments, the euthanasia roller coaster is no way to start a Monday show. How dare you bring this back up? Now I have PTSD from that. But I don't know, like in terms of that, if everything has topped or not for this cycle, it's it's hard to answer because again, it's a concept that we're speaking about on this show for quite a while now, that the attention is so fragmented and we just have so many narratives at the same time going on from gaming to memes that it's hard to say what has basically found its cycle top or where attention will go back, because I personally don't think that this cycle is over and just have no idea what we will
I
be
agree there.
in fall. Will we be talking about gaming again? Will suddenly a new wave in L2s and L2 interest appear in fall? So it's very, very difficult to say that.
Yeah, like so anytime you say like because I think there's a problem where people are looking at they're getting confused by how much money's actually in the system, right? Like how like in my mind, how could you call a top when cumulative numbers, right? So not just the numbers of any singular coin, which right, we've had pockets of stuff, but when cumulative numbers, I put it a thread like I don't know a month ago, and I just kind of got total market stuff, total market TVL, total market volumes, stable coin inflows, all that shit. Like some of that stuff stagnated a little bit, but none of that stuff was up at or above all-time highs outside of like two or three categories and a thread of like 15 different metrics across all of our industry. So yes, like Bitcoin hit an all-time high. And yes, like we got close on Ethereum. I think we were still like 30% short or something like that. But I don't see how you can look at this market, see the structural inflows coming from TradFi, that'll be ETF and BTC. Like that stuff's gonna come. This stuff always takes longer than you think it's going to take, right? Like, oh, ETF's approved. We're going to get everyone in the world is going to want to have exposure to Ethereum and Bitcoin today. They're going to give us all their money right up front. We're going to be going to the moon. It doesn't work that way, right? So like ETF gets approved, then they have to spin up the marketing for it. Then they have to actually go and educate people. Then those people have to actually say, okay, like we'll do 1%. And then it gets bumped to 2%. And then so like, it's not satisfying, but shit takes time, but it's structural change to the industry where we're going to have inflows from, again, like I almost want to draw a picture to quantify just to show like visually how stark the difference is between the size of our industry and TradFi, right? Like when you're talking, we're at 2.5 trillion, 2 trillion now because we're bleeding out, I don't know, versus hundreds of trillions of dollars in stocks and bonds and traditional markets, everything, right? Like it's so minuscule and it takes basically nothing to flow into us to actually create sizable impact.
Yeah, I mean, 2 points to that. I think on the it takes nothing to not a lot of money to flow into this ecosystem to grow significantly. We've seen that with BTC, where just basically a couple bill in the ETF were enough to move the market on the one hand, but on the other hand, also like when you're inside of this bubble, it's hard. I find it hard sometimes to kind of abstract away from that and think and realize, like actively realize how small everything is. Like I'm well aware how big the TradFi market is. I'm aware that Nvidia, just by its market cap alone, is bigger than the whole crypto space. But still, like we do this show. I am in this space every day. It's a full-time thing to do, and sometimes like just hard to have a grasp of those numbers and understand how small it is and how quote unquote irrelevant it is compared to, or irrelevant it is compared to the size of the TradFi market.
Yeah, and for our own perception too, right? Like it's very relevant to us because we're so immersed in it. It's not relevant to everyone else. You kind of, I get that when I walk around sometimes and try to even explain half this shit to anyone. There's like no concept whatsoever, and it's always kind of it can be shocking to me because it is such a big part of my life, and I'm so deeply ingrained that like when someone has no idea what I'm even talking about, and like, man, how like I feel like I'm on an alien planet. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one final point on that, DC investor had very, very short tweet to say on that. ETH and BTC are literally just 25% off their intracycle tops, and you all think the world has ended. Shut the fuck up and accumulate. What I want to do is to cycle into our first piece of news. As I said, I want to make this a bit short on Germany because I feel like we've discussed it for quite a bit on the show, and there's not a lot more to add to it, other than again saying Germany held a total of 50k BTC. If you look at the Arkham dashboard where they're keeping track of that, you can see that they are still holding 22.8k BTC. The remainder of that has been moved to exchanges now with this bigger movement of 60k BTC that has happened a couple hours ago. And the sentiment on the timeline, at least from what I've been able to tell, not only from Kruger but also from what's his name, from OSF and other creators, is like, yeah, it's about to end. I think once we are over that 50% mark of BTC that they have dumped, they moved more than 50% to exchanges already. Then the sentiment will shift on that, and the FUD will basically get more and more quiet. Do you have any thoughts on that, Brett, or shall we move on to the next piece?
Yeah, no, about the same. I was talking with DeFi Agnes yesterday, and like he was showing the same stuff. I mean, the good thing is like the actual dollar figure is less will be realized because they're pushing the price down so far that they're getting bad price execution. So when you see 1.8 billion or 1.3 billion, the fact is that it'll probably be closer to 1 billion because they are just pushing the price down so heavily in such a short time period. So there's actually less dollar pressure, even though the BTC pressure is the exact same. And yeah, once it's gone, like it's cleared and like distributed. Like, thank you for giving it out to everyone, and then hopefully we resume up only or at least sideways for a little bit. It's definitely much better to talk about sideways action than this nihilism down only stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree with that. And I think we've been seeing a bit of that with, I think Miles Deutscher had a post on that with FTX and the 16 billion that will come into the market, and people were panicking about that and kind of forgetting the fact that 12 billion of that is actually not coming in crypto, but it's coming in cash, and it's then basically like a cash infusion to back to degens who will probably want to participate, at least with parts of that, back in the market. However, because we touched on that post by Andrew Kang before, and you, Brett, kind of made the point that those things take time and sometimes take more time than we expect them to take. I feel like that is actually connecting us very well to the second piece of news that I want to get into. Again, it is the Zygames news. Zygames, that gaming platform that got quite a lot of attention on the timeline for the node sale. And basically, just going to go through the most important parts of the post. For those of you watching us on YouTube, sharing this on the screen right now, they're saying that many of you have likely read articles or other posts around the web about the upcoming Xi unlock. We've seen numbers as high as 79%. These reports are incorrect. Ahead of the upcoming unlock, we're announcing that the Xi contributors have agreed to relock their July unlock tokens over 6 months. So this brought the team number down from 85 mil to 17.17 mil in July. Then they're going on to explain what the upcoming July unlock includes, which basically is an unlock of 108 million tokens with a current circulating supply of 300 million tokens. So a 36% increase that we will see with that. And I think the interesting point here is that, I don't know, I had this post also today about tokens launching, and if they only launch with a staking program, that is basically an admission that there's like no real utility for the token yet. We've also seen Prime, when we go back to the gaming segment, coming up with up to a 36 months, up to a 3-year lock for your tokens in exchange for an 85x multiplier. So I feel like we've seen it across the board with different projects who just seem to express that they need more time to build whatever they are building. And it's not only the unlock at TGE. I think people have clocked that basically the further increase, the further unlocks down the road are obviously impacting the price action. We now have websites. I remember Funky, I don't know, like more than half a year ago, shared a good unlock website. And this is when I kind of started tracking that and looking at it daily to see what's coming up, what are some of the next bigger unlocks. And I feel like this has becoming more and more, mainstream attention. And now ahead of big unlocks, it's hard if there's no utility yet for teams to ignore them. And seeing that relock, seeing that some of the investors are happy to basically say, nope, not going to unlock, going to stay with you for 6 more months, is an interesting move to see. I have a couple of thoughts on that, but before I share them, Brett, would like to hear your first thought or impression of that.
So I agree with the sentiment of like, okay, good, long haul, all that stuff. I'm more interested. I saw a bunch of shorts get blown out by this because I think some of the reasons you're looking at some of those unlocks, you go, oh, team gets a shit ton of unlocks, short the coin, make some money on them selling, like win-win, everyone's awesome. I know people have done that with like Arbitrum, huge unlock this list last whatever 2 months ago and went down, but all the shorts got blown out on this one, and people were thinking it was a little bit of manipulation, right? The people piled in the shorts because they saw whatever 70% of the supply was coming undone, whatever, whether it was true or not. And then they made this post. People immediately started buying up the token, which blew out the shorts, which made it gave you a little bit of a short squeeze, and price went crazy. So that's what hit my timeline yesterday based on this lock unlock news. And I thought that was pretty interesting.
Which way around do you think that this is working as a follow-up question? Do you think that the teams are watching the future market and are watching basically a shorting price action ahead of an upcoming unlock, and they might have a plan, or they might have communicated a plan with investors to relock, and then if there's just an overwhelming amount of shorts, they might do that. If there's not a lot of shorting action going on, they don't do that, or do you think that they just don't care about that at all and they do whatever they had planned initially?
Yeah, that's tough, right? Like, I would like to think that you don't pay attention to the number and like you let that, because like I think a fixation on the number is something outside of your control for the most part. I guess there's a little bit of control here with lock, unlock, schedule, shit like that. But like, I've never been a fan of any project or community that hyper focuses on the price. I feel like you should do your thing, and then like you following up or staying true to your North Star is what dictates price in the market. Ultimately, people will buy it because you're actually staying true to whatever you're delivering, you're doing all that shit. And it's basically just whatever. So anyways, I just say that as myself. Like, I wouldn't focus on price, but I know people will and do, and they may have done that. But I would like to think that they wouldn't, and they would be doing it because it's for the better of their ecosystem and not for the short-term satisfaction or awareness of price.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And I mean, obviously, we are very obsessed with token prices in this space, as I don't know, as opposed to decision making, not only obviously to the investment level or to the speculating level, but also I would say to the decision making level in companies. A lot of that is driven by price action, whereas you wouldn't necessarily see this in the day-to-day business of every publicly traded company. It's just not the fact that you look at sentiment on X and you look at your share price moving and like, oh shit, we need to announce something new to pump our token or to pump our share price. But also, of course, there's like way more volatility in crypto, so that's different. But I had a call with a gaming team last week, and they were concerned about that. They not going to say which team it is because none of that is public information yet. They were pretty concerned about their upcoming token launch and how to balance basically the amount of tokens that they want to be locked versus unlocked at TGE, and how to also think about basically further distributions, how much information to share, how much information not to share, what the degen math will be doing, and what narratives will be painted off that. So there's definitely a lot of fixation on the price action and how to communicate around that and what narratives to build, because we as degens, as investors, traders, very much obsess about that as well.
This is totally an aside, but I've been digging into the relative market caps of all this stuff. So sorry to take it back to the thing, but one, I didn't realize how low we are, 1.2 trillion, not awesome. But one, like, yeah, man, global stock market, 95 trillion, global bond market, 133 trillion, real estate market cap, 326 trillion, gold, 12 trillion, derivatives market, 640 trillion in notional value. Like, yeah, man, there's just so much out there just relative to us. And we're, a tenth of gold, which is a tenth of bond market, just to show relative size. Crazy.
Yeah, that's 1% of the bond market that we are. Again, if crypto would cease to exist tomorrow, it just wouldn't really impact the TradFi
No.
world. Like, as much as we like to share those stats with, what is it? More than 50% of S&P 500 companies are using blockchain technology, etc. It's just not at a relevant size yet. But um, this is, again, I don't know. I don't find this a scary thought. I find this actually quite calming, because one of the questions that I get like most often, also as a creator, I hosted a session yesterday with Play Ember and their creator program, and like one of the questions that came up there was, "Am I too late? Am I too late to become a creator? Did I miss everything in crypto already?" And I'm thinking, I don't know, it's quite the opposite. Like when I got first into crypto, it was 2016. ETH was like at $11, $12 when I first bought like a very small bag, admittedly. And I didn't start creating content like for, the first, I don't know, 4 to 5 years of my crypto investment journey, whatever. And I don't think that I'm too late. So if you compare those numbers and see how small we are relatively to the TradFi world, I would actually find a lot of comfort in that, in terms of how like early you are as a creator investor, whatever you want to do in this space.
Yeah, I'm gonna gussy it up and post on it today just to try to give some perspective to people.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about being early versus talking about being late and talking about content, it's actually a good segue into the last piece of news that I want to touch on. Probably we'll expect that this will be a longer discussion. We'll also get into the Web3 roundup a bit later. We have mentioned that, where are we here? That Thread Guy has published his podcast with Andrew Tate 18 hours ago, 3 hours long, is now at 2.2 million views. So did another 100K views since we have started this show. Is doing numbers on YouTube as well. It's getting quite a lot of traction. We'll probably hit another million on X alone very easily, and it's a controversial one. It's not only a controversial one because Andrew Tate is the person being interviewed. I feel like a lot of people have been discussing the tone of the interview, how Thread Guy has been handling it. And I think, Brett, the two of us, we had the discussion yesterday after the show in terms of like thinking of ourselves as content creators and where we want to take this and where we find the balance between basically being um, like informative or educational, which I think is to both of our content that we are creating like pretty important, versus also trying sometimes to be, a bit more edgy, but not necessarily sensationalist. To basically about trying this balance where we are comfortable with. So that's like one aspect as creators that I would like to talk a bit about. But before we do that, on the podcast specifically, did you watch it? Will you watch it? Did you have any initial thoughts or reactions to that?
I haven't watched it. I saw a few clips on based on the breakdown that TG had in his initial post. I'm a TG stan, so like I've met him in person. Love the guy. I think there's not a bad bone in his body. Frankly, he's just like out there trying to do his shit. And yeah, so like I actually commented on his tweet yesterday where it's like, in my opinion, he's going to do the thing, and either it's going to come out and it's going to suck, and he's going to learn from it and he's going to grow, or it's going to come out and it's going to be awesome, and he's going to learn from it and he's going to grow. And me wanting to see that of him, knowing who he is and what he's trying to do for himself, this industry, all that stuff, I can't help but be enthusiastic about whatever he's doing. So yeah, I'm fully on board with him doing it. I haven't watched it. I don't particularly care for Andrew Tate, but I do recognize that through him, who I think is broadly considered to be a bad human, I would say. I know there will be people that get exposed to TG who's a good human, and I think that is a net good for people and our industry broadly, because now people who didn't know TG before that know TG, and that's it. No bad can come of that, frankly, in my opinion. So I'm all for it. Yeah, get TG platformed.
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts and also follow-up questions on that. But before we do that, we have on the one hand Tira in the YouTube comments saying smart move by Thread Guy for the attention and move up. Quite a run up for him. He's not supporting this guy, just getting views for his hustle, which should get applause on the timeline. And we also have Funky with his hand up. Funky, my friend, welcome to the stage. What are your thoughts on Thread Guy, on the interview? Where do you want to take this?
Yeah, GM friends. It's very similar to Bread. Honestly, I'm not a fan of Andrew Tate. I've never, I think, even been able to make it through a full interview with the man for various reasons. We can put those aside. But I was very proud for TG just wanting to do this and going out there, doing something that was just, he got a lot of hate for it just because of who Andrew Tate is. Honestly, I'm gonna be going on my flight to Brussels, so I'll probably download the talk and watch it at some point because I am curious to see how it all played out. Just even seeing some of TG's reactions, and I want to kind of throw a little props to Steve in the audience right now because he was saying something on the TL the other day, sort of remarking how far we've devolved into where we're just so reactionary. People just immediately hate something. They can't just be open minded enough to be adults and really try and understand both sides. And even if you don't agree with a perspective, doesn't mean you need to be hateful or anything like that. And I think because Steve and I are a little bit older, we come from a different generation where we kind of respected people before we got to this really hyper, just extremes, just on both sides are so kind of crazy. So I'm kind of curious to watch it from that, and just a little snippets that I saw from TG made me really want to watch it. Like, what do you think of my haircut? And just like the instant responses that he got from Andrew, I think were funny. So I'm willing to watch it. I think that as Tiro said, props to TG for just the hustle, and he wants to grow his platform into something much bigger than just CT. So just a lot of love for a Thread guy.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. And the run up in terms of the clips, the vlog that he has created was done in a very, very smart way. And also, shout out to Steve, who's in the audience with us today. He had this excellent post that I'm sharing on the screen saying a lot of people have strong opinions about the Thread Guy's interview with Andrew Tate. So I'm taking a different approach and encouraging people to consider TG's goals. I'm not going to read all of that, but one of the important parts is my inclination is TG doesn't want to shout on CT forever. He has aspirations outside of this space. He wants to be a personality creator, entrepreneur, like Aiden Ross, Logan Paul, Face Banks, etc. And every one of the aforementioned people would engage with Tate. Logan Paul already has in a very public spat, and given TG's friends with Banks, I imagine he's getting counsel from him. And also goes on to say, would I interview Tate on my show? No, but I have different goals, and different sensibilities about Tate. And I'm not going to immediately cancel or disavow when someone says there's something I don't agree with. People are complex creatures. I'm not bailing on a person like that. I think that's a very important point to also make. And I think especially the point to say that TG has aspirations to grow outside of this space, and it's just a different goal for him for his content is absolutely fair. And like I'm in a similar boat. I wouldn't interview Andrew Tate. I wouldn't like to have this guy on the Mono Market, but it's also a different kind of show. And neither is TG an investigative journalist, because I've seen a lot of people, oh, you should have gone harder in the interview with him, etc. Like that's not his job. That's not what he wants to do with his content. So I definitely agree with all of the points that both you, Funky, and Brett have been making. Also saw that Kusha joined us on the stage. Kusha, my friend, welcome to the stage. What are your thoughts on the podcast, on the interview situation?
GM, my guys, it's been a while. I saw it. I watched it for some time. I think I saw it up to like 2 hours. It's a great interview. I'm not even gonna lie. It's a good interview. TG did a great job. The questions he asked. It was a very casual and relaxed interview, and it didn't feel like he was trying to pressure Tate into answering any particular type of questions, which is good, seeing as it wasn't an interview that he set up with money or he didn't pay Tate to do it. So it was more like Tate gave him time out of his own desire to give him time. And it went better than I thought it would go, to be honest. I thought Tate was going to be all over in his face, dragging him to the mud, but it ended up being very, very interesting. Tate did say some things about him that was very kind of like, no, I don't think that is true. And, most of the things he did say about crypto were also LARP. But again, TG did a very good job of managing and steering that conversation in so many different directions. And I think Tate, like every other human being, sometimes has good things to say and sometimes has shit to say. But the difference between Tate and most people is he says and voices out good and bad opinions with the same intensity. Like very good shit, he says it loud. Very terrible shit, he says it loud too. So it's just like that is him. And it was very, very good of TG to be able to navigate through that and steer the conversation in ways that limited the amount of stuff that ended up coming out from that conversation negatively, but also produced a lot of good stuff as well.
Yeah, I like the perspective. It's again, it's more than black and white. There's a lot of gray to the world, and you can't say, I don't know, TG is good or is bad for doing that. It's a very individual thing. What we want to do is, before we continue this conversation, to quickly take a moment to go through the rest of the snapshot, have a look at the Web3 roundup and some of the other bits of news from the last 24 hours. First piece. Lionel Messi sends water 200% to a $70 million market cap with an Instagram post before the crash. Tripluid saying Lionel Messi promotes the water token on his Instagram story to his 504 million followers. Token surged 200%. And the price has been falling after that. I feel like a lot of the commentary on the timeline was that it's not Messi doing it himself. It's his team or his management handling his socials, and either speculation that he is not aware of that or that his account might have been hacked. Farouk was also one leaning in the direction saying no chance he knows what's happening right now, but you'd assume he has a better team than this. Second piece of news, Golem, one of the earliest Ethereum ICOs, has sent over $100 million worth of ETH to exchanges in the past month. Van Eck, third piece of news, applying files for the Solana ETF. Eric Balkunas commenting on that, saying, looks like Solana ETFs are going to have a final deadline of mid-March 2025. But between now and then, the most important date is in November. If Biden wins, these will be basically dead. If Trump wins, anything pause. We talked about it. The fourth piece of news, Blast releasing the first phase of gold distribution, or rather the first gold distribution in phase 2. Big winners again being Fantasy, Top and Thruster with more than $1 million in gold, 1.2 million gold each. Wasabi with 800k gold, quite a lot. And then the typical other winners, YOLO, Cambria, Hyperlock in that $500k range. Blaster, good to see, with 250k gold. And also Gangsters Arena, that game by Uncharted, one of the gaming companies that I personally invested in, has received 140k gold for the first distribution, which was pretty cool to see. More news from Web3, Bonk overtaking with market cap in a heated Solana meme coin battle. Then the post by Andrew Kang, or the reply by Andrew Kang that we discussed, about 98% of coins having topped for the cycle, in his opinion. And then the last piece of news, actually something that I want to look a bit more into. The season 6 of Optimism Governance launches today with new funding opportunities. We had that DAO topic a couple days ago, or was it yesterday even? I don't remember that, on the show. And I think Optimism has been doing pretty interesting concept with the token house, with the intents in the seasons, and with how they are structuring it. I also think that it's so complex that not a lot of people are taking the time to actually look into how it works, and probably not a lot of people will be applying for that because of the complexity. Curious to hear if you have any thoughts on that, Brett, because I saw you nodding along.
Yeah, so I've been watching them for several seasons now, and now because my mind goes in the same place yours does, we're like not a lot of people enter into it, so like maybe there's an opportunity there to enter, get some funding for the modern market as a marketing arm for them or something, just whatever. I have accumulated a lot of awesome dashboards that actually track the retroactive public goods rounds of Optimism. So I'll share those with you guys and maybe just make a post on it broadly because I think it'll be useful. A lot of good visuals. Yeah, like they've been giving out a shit ton of money, and I know over the past year or so, I've had several instances where people just like Dilo Frog, right? He's a coder / artist on Base who's just been creating a bunch of stuff. He's one of the first generative artists on there, on-chain generative artists on Base. And he just, at the end of one of those retroactive rounds, because they do favor creators or have traditionally, along with like Zach XBT and some infrastructure tooling, stuff like that. He's just like, oh, cool, I just got 20 grand, which is awesome. Unfortunately, this kind of plays into the previous conversation of like number go down for a lot of these things because constant dilution. This is all coming out of OP token, right? Everyone, there's a huge treasury for the community. The community has all these these initiatives for things that they want to actually give funding to. I know there's actually been some controversy. I don't remember the exact specifics of some changing of the governance or like what their intent for what they want to give funds out to with OP specifically. But yeah, they just keep giving out tokens because it's free money. They print it out of thin air, and well, they did whenever they went live with the token, and now they can just keep giving it out. People get it, and unless there's something to do with that token, what do? They sell, right? So if their thing is to just constantly give out this token so people can sell it, whether it's marketing or creators or whatever, token price is probably going to go down. It's actually one of the better L2 tokens to date. I think it's actually doing pretty decent, but it's kind of commentary on long term how this thing might behave.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. We've also seen like a lot of FUD around Arbitrum and their 200 mil plus gaming initiative. And I don't know, I've seen this. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. Like pretty simplistic take to some extent. Why are they giving out Arbitrum, or why are they giving out their native token? They should borrow stable coins against that, or they should borrow ETH against that, and rather give that out instead and keep their own tokens to keep the price up, instead of giving out the tokens that will ultimately end up being dumped either way. Is this a too simple way to think about things? Is this a legit strategy? What are your thoughts, Brad?
I'd love to see it. I think so. Like, rather than just giving, like, one, I respect how hard it is to track and do all this stuff. Funky actually talked about this with Polkadot governance, right? We're really involved with that. It could be kind of a lot to deal with, and then like managing who you're giving it to, were they properly vetted, is someone trying to scam you, all that shit, like that stuff. I respect that, whatever. But I think this space also rewards people being creative, and at this point, everyone's tired of seeing the same shit. I think doing something like that, one, it might work out. I think it's worth an attempt, right? You do that, and if people like it, people will copy you as they do. You get a little bit of marketing out of it, and if it works out in your favor, like financially, well, you guys just save some money, right? And so I think that the market would reward them if you would try. Don't do it with the entire allocation. Do it with a portion of it. See how it works out. If it worked out well, expand it. Do whatever. But I also think, like, again, commentary on how these L2 tokens, and talk about experimenting broadly. I think right now the only use is governance, right? Which is no one fucking participates in. 10 to 30% is, I think, the average, and 30% is on the high end. And I think a lot of these L2s would benefit because they don't use them as the native gas token. And I think that's a cheap way to do it. No one wants to, like, it's just annoying to spend it as gas, and it's fucks with your treasury to have to manage that for everyone. So I think these teams could stand to benefit with being creative with how their token is used within their ecosystem, whether it's sequencer fees or using it to capture MEV and cycle it back to on the L2 because they can control it because the teams own the sequencer, and then cycling that back to holders of the token, but trying to do something that is value additive to the token or to owning the token other than utility as the gas token or just straight up governance. I think the market is craving some kind of creativity there, and no one's really given it at this point.
Yeah, very very much agree with that, and also to the point of basically borrowing against your native L2 token and stables and trying that maybe on a smaller scale. Don't do it with a 200 mil grant program. Do it with a
right, yeah,
a smaller 7 low 8-figure number for a small initiative, and just see how that works out. But I also have more thoughts on that. But I also see Funky with his hand up. Funky, what are your thoughts on the discussion we've been having around the DAOs?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great conversation, and I think that's something that Arbitrum probably, or any of these L2s probably need to figure out long term, right, for sustainability of the token. Because, and I did post the link down below, Legendary, for that unlock schedule to the site if you need it again. But with this constant sell pressure, if they're going to fund grants, right, they need to do these things. They have to attract developers. They have to attract users. This is the whole name of the game, right? Where we're talking about attention. One of the things, for instance, that Polkadot did as part of its forkless upgrades was in the runtime code, they made the treasury a multi-asset treasury. So now, because we were aware of this constant giving away of DOT to build public goods or whatever, or maybe do some bad marketing, we realized the necessity of we need to scale out into stable coins. So now we have made referendums that actually put a bunch of DOT aside on one of the main DeFi chains, Hydra, and it's now just every day effectively DCAing into stables So part of that inflation that feeds into the treasury is now being moved into USDC and USDT. So now we have a few, I think about $6 or $7 million worth of stables. And we're trying to encourage people, if you need top ups due to volatility from an earlier dot ask for stables. If you have a small spend ask that's under $250,000, ask for stables. Because I think once you do that, it frees up from that constant sell pressure being on the native token that's the main asset of whatever given chain it may be.
Yeah, no, I like that. And a follow-up question for you on the topic of, I think we've been moving more into this DAO conversation, which I think is an interesting one to have, and probably won't use the last 5 minutes to go back to Andrew Tate, but stick on this topic. On the topic of DAO participation that Brad also mentioned, with his figure being that between 10 to 30% are actively participating. Do you think that there's ways to incentivize people to be more active in DAOs? Is this the right way to go about things, or is it more what maybe the Ape DAO has been trying to do with the Banana Bill, which we talked about, where it's basically this $100 million or 100 million Ape program, but where you also have a dedicated board of people who will basically work with that and actually hire those advisors to work on that, because you cannot expect everyone to be like equally engaged in the DAO. Which side do you lean?
Yeah, I think this is something that, we have to have. It's really tough. We had a space on this yesterday afternoon, and just about like how DAOs evolve, and you kind of need some, even though everybody's all for decentralization, you need some sort of leadership. You need people who are paying attention, have their ear to the ground. No, the solution that they came up with in Polkadot, for instance, is delegating the tokens to people who can pay attention to these things, whether they're organizations or individuals, because no one has the time to keep up with all of these things. And I think that there is that need for, whether it's a smaller governing body or something like that, at least in these initial phases, because we're nowhere near, at the end of the day, DAOs are still human creations. It's still human beings involved. It's going to be messy. It's going to be political. And I don't know if there's any one right solution right now, but I think as these things continue to evolve, it's probably going to require some baby steps that maybe, whether it's delegations like in Polkadot, or having some kind of governing body, maybe that Ape DAO is using to then, kind of assess these opportunities and then give feedback to the community. It requires a lot of constant communication. It's very difficult. I'll just say DAOs are super messy, and anybody who's very heavily involved in one will tell you the very same thing.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. It's a complex question. Probably there's no one fits all solution for that. But Brett, I saw you coming off mute during Funky's take, so going straight to you.
Yeah. No, he actually led me right to where I wanted to go, which was asking if he was a fan of the delegate model. I'm it's hard for me to say like incentivizing anything. Like we've seen the negative outcomes of that, right? When you incentivize behavior, but also like this entire industry is built on incentives. So there probably is a good middle ground where you can, the incentive should be that your vote could lead to being a good steward of the ecosystem and actually getting money back to you or whatever. But people, it's just not entertaining, right? It's the same thing. Student council back in school, like I personally don't have a ton of interest in governance because it feels like a bunch of bureaucracy. And I don't know if that's just me being jaded from previous, just being an American, right? There's a lot of distrust around here with that stuff. So, yeah, it's hard for me to say. And I was just curious on Funky's take because he obviously has a lot more experience with that than the delegate model seems appropriate to me, or like a good balance.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I also think it's like a bit, idealistic to think that people should vote because it matters to them, because ultimately we're not even seeing that in real life elections. I don't know. The EU had 40, 50-ish% participating. France actually managed to rally more people this time, but typically you also see elections just go under 50% of people who are eligible to vote actually going in and casting their vote. One final point before we get to the end of the show, Funky, because you had mentioned it and helped me with the name of that website. It is a token.unlocks.app. I'm sharing it on the screen for those watching us on YouTube. Actually, pretty helpful website to see what unlocks are coming up in terms of tokens. We have DYDX with an unlock apparently coming up over in the next 4 hours and 51 seconds, 50 seconds, Pendle, etc., etc. So this is exactly the website that I like looking at for the unlocks. Find it is pretty helpful. That being said, we have reached the end of our show for today. So, Brett, thank you very much for hosting with me today. Thank you to our speakers, Tiro, Funky, Kusho, and Oxy. And obviously also thank you to everyone listening in the audience.
I'm going to do one final note just because I've been getting a lot of this shit. I've been getting a bunch of emails from like MetaMask and texts from Coinbase, and like none of these things are real. Don't be clicking links, people. Like half these things have misspellings and stuff on them. But I know I saw a thread the other day where some guy got scammed out of $1.7 million in his Coinbase account because he partially entered his seed phrase into a site and then they brute forced the rest of it. Just be careful, people. Like, you're not going to get emails from a lot of these things. You're not going to get text. Like the text thing was, I got a text that said they were Coinbase and they said reply yes, no, whatever. And then I said no, saying I didn't do a transaction, which I was like, that seems strange. And then I started getting a bunch of follow-up calls, which I was like, okay, this is the scammer calling me. They know that I have a Coinbase account because I just said no to a Coinbase question. And they're trying to get me to like give them some information. So I just rejected everything beyond that. And it was, yeah, account's fine. So be careful, people. I don't know if there was a leak recently and there's a rash of these things going out, but yeah, don't give up your info.
That's a very good PSA to end the show on. Once more, thank you for everyone joining us in the YouTube comments, joining us on YouTube or on X, and have a great rest of your Tuesday, and see you tomorrow.